Episode 3 of Agatha All Along is here. I went into the first and second episodes of the show with skepticism. In my discussion of those episodes, I mentioned that after the recent slate of disappointing MCU shows and movies, I wasn't excited about Agatha All Along anymore, but I maintained my curiosity. I walked into episode 1 and 2 with doubts, and I finished them as a Marvel believer again. That's the power of Kathryn Hahn.
Yeah, perfect.
Okay.
Right.
Oh, did you want me to?
So I walked into this week's new episode, episode 3, through many miles of tricks and trials with anticipation, high expectations, hype, and hope. And they were all not only satisfied, but surpassed. Let's get into it, but before we do, this is a discussion of episode 3 of Agatha All Along. There will be spoilers. Be warned and heed before thee embark further upon thine road. Down, down, down the road. Down the witch's road. Down the witch. I've been singing that song for a week. I feel it. For this episode, we had witchcraft, we had women being fabulous, drinking wine, we had hauntings, we had Patti LuPone in a wig. There is nothing else I could possibly want more. The episode starts where the last one ended. We are finally here on the witch's road, starting our journey. Less than an hour in, chaos already ensues within the Coven.
Where's she? Help me! Getting lower, witch people!
I mean, they are the Coven of Chaos, so figures. That leads us to Sharon, one of the highlights of this episode and of the series so far. The whole internet is mourning her death. Which, valid, and I'm there, I am mourning with you. But to go on a bit of a tangent, it speaks a lot about the writing quality of the material, that there's more online grieving for Sharon or Mrs. Hart dying than there was for Maria Hill. Twitter is literally full of tweets mourning Sharon, and TikTok is full of edits of her. I mean, Maria was part of the MCU much longer than Sharon was when she died. Maria is a huge part of the comics. Sharon's not even in the comics, I think. And yet, the writing, the material leading up to the respective characters' deaths have made it so that one has more impact than the other. I'm not so much saying Maria Hill sucks as a character and that Mrs. Hart is better. No. I'm more so saying Secret Invasion sucked, and I'm really happy Agatha All Along is leagues of an improvement. It makes me really happy that the franchise I love feels like it's finally producing quality material again. I know we're only 3 episodes in, but it's really good, you guys. Back to Sharon! She was funny in the previous episodes, and she's even more funny and adorable in this episode.
This is a kidnapping!
She's also possibly an alcoholic.
Oh, okay.
Or not, she could just be a normal person trying to deal with the fact that she's just been abducted by a coven of witches and being forced to go upon a journey in an extra-dimensional plane. No judgment.
I have had a very hard day. Do not judge me.
Her death is sad, and I do feel for the character, especially because she's portrayed really well by Debra Jo Rupp. Let's recap what Sharon's been through lately, shall we? So she was living in what seemed like a quiet life in Westview, got mind-controlled and imprisoned by a witch who suppressed her consciousness and her identity while making her act out silly sitcoms. In one episode of which she was forced to watch her husband almost choke to death, but she couldn't do anything about it.
Stop it! Stop it! Stop it! Stop it! Stop it! Please. Please. Wanda? Wanda, I'm begging you. Let him breathe. Please.
She also got emotionally and psychologically tortured by said witch, who imparted her own emotional trauma upon the whole town.
You let us sleep. We have your nightmares.
We feel your pain. Your grief is poisoning us.
You know, I love Wanda, but she fucked that whole town up. She got broken free in part thanks to the help of Agatha Harkness, another witch. Then Agatha gets identity spelled by Wanda and is imprisoned in Westview. So in the 3 years Sharon has lived outside the Hex, Agatha was always there. So there was always a reminder of the event. And there was always a threat that Wanda would come back one day just to collect Agatha, as she said she would.
You're gonna need me.
If I do, I know where to find you.
Wait.
And on top of that, her husband also died in those 3 years. And on top of what is on top of that, everybody keeps calling her Mrs. Hart.
Thank you, Mrs. Hart. Hey, she has a name. It's Mrs. Hart.
Mrs. Hart?
Mrs. Hart!
Mrs. Hart.
Mrs. Hart! Mrs. Hart!
That was her name from when she was being mind-controlled, tortured, and from when she lost all of her agency. I'd guess it must be pretty uncomfortable to be called that a lot again.
No, it's Mrs. Davis, dear. No,
right.
Mrs. Hart was what Wanda, branded me,
I feel really bad for her. And since all of that's happened, she's been living what seems like a really lonely life, given that she willingly went with Agatha when she invited her for a get-together.
I was just wondering if you'd like to come to a little party I'm having tonight.
A party? Really?
Yeah.
Oh, I haven't been to a party since Mr. Davis passed away.
I know what desperation for company looks like, Sharon. I have it too. And now again, she gets abducted by witches, and then she dies. Sharon has been so tortured this past few years, but despite all of that, she's still upbeat and sweet. She was too good for this world, and what the hell, it's so cruel that in her final moments, she was forced by the witch's road to relive one of the most traumatic moments in her life.
Please. Please. Wanda, I'm begging you. Let him breathe. Please.
What the heck? It's starting to get dark up on this show. It's funny and cynical and campy, but there's a real darkness there that's starting to roll in like thunderclouds, and I really like that. I will miss Mrs. Hart. I mean, Sharon. I do wish that we see more of her. I don't know. Maybe she will come back. I don't know. Anything's possible. She's funny, she's tragic, she's lovely to watch, and she's dead now.
Sharon's dead.
Who's Sharon?
And that brings us, of course, to the star of the show, Agatha Harkness herself. But before I continue, please, if you are enjoying this video, kindly consider leaving a like or a comment on the video. I am a small channel, and that would help me out a lot. Thank you. Maybe even a subscribe. Back to Miss Agatha. I mentioned in my discussion of episode 1 and 2 that one of my favorite things about the show is that it knows what it is, and it knows who Agatha is, more importantly. Oftentimes, when you see a villain get their own spin-off, they get sanitized. They become a more marketable, less dynamic version of themselves. There's usually a redemption arc, and this can work, but sometimes it doesn't. Most of the time it doesn't. It fails really bad. Agatha All Along doesn't feel like it's trying to make Agatha seem like a good person, actually. It doesn't feel like it's trying to justify her, it just feels like it's telling her story. She's still the witch who killed a dog, she's still mean, and she's cynical. It's keeping everything we loved about her in WandaVision. They're definitely adding more depth to her, making her more dimensional, which is fabulous, but they're not erasing her trademark meanness. And that's displayed so much in this episode, with her actually choosing not to drink the poison. She's saving herself, and I really like that. As fun as Agatha is to watch, she is probably very irritating to be around, and it's no mystery why the other witches don't like her. But the series is also starting to show the deeper sides of Agatha. She's mean and villainous and selfish for sure, but you can kind of tell now that she's playing that up. Once the poison starts working and Lilia gets haunted by her past, Agatha doesn't make fun of her or kick her down. She gives her a knowing, concerned, but supportive look.
Okay.
And I love that because not only does it make Agatha feel more dimensional, but it also makes the Coven feel more like an actual Coven. It's starting to feel like a sisterhood. Another big moment is Agatha telling Jen she always believed Jen was doing important work.
I'm bound! He stole my magic! We're all gonna die here! I do not want to die here! This is not where I die!
I have always hated you. If this is a pep talk. But I left you alone because what you were doing was important.
She knows when to be petty, and she knows when to be real. And honestly, this moment felt like such a happy callback to Parks and Recreation. Agatha makes it a point that she does not like Jennifer, but despite that, she believes in her work. And it's kind of like that in real life. Ironically, the praise that hits harder is the praise coming from people who hate you or people who don't like you that much. And it reminded me of Jen Barkley from Parks and Rec.
And you can trust me. Because I don't care enough about you to lie.
We also got the reveal that Agatha traded her son for the Darkhold, and this really terrible moment. And Man, what the heck? I think that if Agatha did indeed sacrifice her child for the Darkhold, I think that would be such an amazing, interesting choice to have for a main character. That is so messed up, and yet it's so perfect to have that as a backstory for this particular character, for Agatha Harkness. Especially if she regrets it, oh, we have a major haunted past. I do think there's more to the story, though. There's more there that they're not yet revealing. But so far, I love it, and I mean, needless to say, Kathryn Hahn, a performer for the gods. There was also a Mefistaur mention. I don't really know who he is. I know he's in the comics and he's a bad guy and he's kind of like a big deal. But I was here during the WandaVision discussions years ago. And honestly, I'm just kind of tired of hearing that name. I have no comments about Mefistaur. If he comes into the show, lovely. If he doesn't, lovely. If Teen is Mefistaur, lovely. That brings us briefly to Teen. Who is he? Is the big mystery, right? We all have a pretty good guess who he is. I mean, yeah, it's so obvious, right? Even if you've never read a comic book like me, but you just vaguely know of their existence, you can guess pretty much who Teen is. From the promo material to the context, you know who he is. But for the normies, shout out to the normies, for the general public, this is probably a big mystery, and the way the show is unraveling that mystery too is so far pretty enjoyable. They were hinting pretty heavily in this episode that Teen could be Agatha's son.
I doubt she'd even recognize her own son if he showed up at her doorstep.
And they're hinting so good that it's making even me doubt what I know. So yeah, this whole sigil and glamour thing is so fun, and I am so on board with the way that they're doing this mystery. Even if I already know the answer, I love the journey. We also got a lot more of the Coven this episode, and again, this show is really doing a great job at getting me invested in these people. They're all great, and this week it's Jennifer Kale's test, and it was already so fun, so I'm looking forward to seeing what they have in store, especially for Lilia Calderu. I don't really know if I'm pronouncing her name right in English, so I'm sorry, but in my mother tongue, Caldero means like a cooking cauldron. And I think that's nice because she's a witch and witches use cauldrons. I went into the show already being a fan of Patti LuPone, so I went into this already looking forward to see her. But Lilia so far is just so much more fun and more interesting than I could have ever hoped for. She's allegedly around 400 years old, and when the Witch's Road showed us what was haunting her, oh, consider me intrigued. That girl in the dress who was like reportedly a young Lilia, she was creepy. Very creepy. And that decayed woman, very creepy. It was all creepy. Jennifer's haunting was creepy too. The old-timey medieval horror surgeon vibes. Gross. Get me out of there. Nope, I don't, no. The show is not horror and it's not scary at all, but I really appreciate the horror influences. They're really great. Although Alice's haunting wasn't that creepy, it was more sad. I feel bad for her. Now let's talk about structure, because damn, I love it when my TV shows have and make use of good structure. WandaVision had a sitcom of the week structure, and it was great when it stuck to that, but it was also great when it broke free from it. So this episode is our very first episode inside the Witch's Road, and it was the first test, and it gave us a whole new production design aesthetic that I loved. It was very Real Housewives, very wine mom, wealthy, influencer, probably believes in Gwyneth Paltrow kind of vibes. And it made sense. It was Jennifer Kale's test. I enjoyed it so much. This show continues to be really fun and creative and engaging. And if this is the structure, if this is the Witch's Road, if it's a series of tests with new sets, new costumes, and new creative aesthetics, oh honey, we are going to have a good time. It seems that way because the trailers also showed us the 70s hippie rock and roll-y vibe, and I cannot wait. WandaVision was so great with all of the fun costumes and fun sets, and this one is going down that route, and I'm just so happy. I know we're only 3 episodes in, but I can't believe that at one point there was a time that I wasn't excited for this show. And I'm really sorry for doubting it, but don't blame me. Blame Secret Invasion. I was really looking forward to Secret Invasion because the LMD arc of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. was one of the best arcs on that show. One of the best arcs on the whole of TV, in fact, I believe. There were robots looking like the main characters, and you had no idea who you could trust because you had no idea who was the robot and who was the human. I thought Secret Invasion would be like that. You would be doubting the whole time who you can trust. I thought it would be an interesting spy thriller. Well, it wasn't that. Whatever it was bad. But Agatha All Along, this is me. This is my time. This is my moment. People keep saying, who asked for this show? Well, me, bitch. I asked for this. This is my show. I want magical women who are damaged by life, also morally ambiguous, but still overall good, going down a perilous, high-stakes magical journey. I want that shit. Pump it into my blood. Where we drink wine, wear wigs, live through trauma, wear fun costumes, and have a blast. This show has everything I ever wanted. Not just in a Marvel show, but just like like in media, just in anything. I mentioned it in my previous video, but the witches stories in Discworld are my favorite books. And it's mostly elderly, magical women going on whimsical journeys, being grouchy and mean and funny and smart. And that's the shit that I love. There's not really a lot of stories like that. Not that many in books, not that many in movies, and not that many in TV. So I'll take it wherever I can get it. And the fact that I'm getting it as part of one of my favorite franchises is just chef's kiss. With a big budget, with a talented cast, and with a wonderful team behind it. I'm really enjoying Agatha All Along, and I cannot wait for us to get to the end of this journey. Well, actually, no, I would like to delay that because I'm really enjoying it, but you know what I mean. What about you? How did you like this episode? Please tell me in the comments. I would like to know. That's it. I'm out.